All right, so today what we're going to learn is we're going to learn how to put multiple panels within a frame so that this way, whenever you create your objects, you don't have to pass them back and forth between a bunch of different frames. Just makes programming more efficient and be a little easier for you. Right now, what I have pulled up here is I have a sample frame and a sample program that we're basically going to make in this video, so this way you can see how it's done. So I'm going to go ahead and run this. And what you're going to see, it's going to take a minute because I hadn't run Netbeans yet. Give it a second. Should be pulling up any second now. There it is. One more second. There we go. All right. So what it does is it's very simple, is that it has this name class, and basically you just put in a bunch of different names. Nothing too fancy here. Just and then after you're done adding the names, you hit finished, and it brings up a new panel that has the names listed. And then we can go back, and I can type in more names, add them here, and then whenever I finish, it just keeps adding it to it. And what it's going to have is it's going to have an array list behind the scenes that just honestly keeps track of these names and these objects that are within there. So we're going to go ahead and exit out of this, and we'll see some of the code here in just a second. So the one thing that we have is we have this name class right here, and it just has a private instance variable constructor and then a getter file. And nothing fancy, nothing major, just kind of does that. So we're going to start with this, and then we're going to create a GUI like we normally do. So we're going to do from new file, swing GUI form JFrame, and hit next. And then we're going to call it, and we're just going to call it names, and hit finish. All right, and so we have this, and we've done this multiple times before, so we all know how to do this. And the thing is, though, this is where it's going to get a little different. I would like to go and set the layout to absolute, because that just makes it a lot easier. And then one of the things we're going to do is, if you notice over here, it says layered pane right there. We're going to put one of those on our JFrame right here, and we're going to expand it out. And then we're going to go ahead and set its layout to absolute also. Now, one thing I did find that was a little bit easier is now we're going to add our panels. So right here, what we're going to do is over here where it says layered pane, I'm going to right click on it, and I'm going to say add from palette, swing container, panel. I just found this works better than dragging it over. It just makes a lot more sense. And then we're going to expand this all the way out. One other thing you may want to do before we move on is in your frame, go and set the properties and go ahead and make sure that your minimum size is set to your preferred size. It just makes it easier later on. You don't have to go through and set all of them because we're extending the same size as the frame, so it'll kind of carry through. But it just makes your frame a little easier. So after we've done that, we're going to go and create our second panel. And we're going to go extend it out also. All right. So one thing is you'll look down here, and the panel that you have bolded is the one that you're going to be working on. So right now we're working on panel 1 because it's bolded. So we're going to add in the text field. Just like that. Oh, and you can set these panels to be absolute layout also. It'll help. All right. And then we're going to add our 2 buttons, wherever they may be. There they are. I think after doing this enough times, I would have it all ready to go. All right. There we go. And then now what we're going to do is we're going to switch over to our JPanel2 frame. So what we're going to do is we're just going to double click on it. There we go. Okay, so if this happens, it happens a little bit. It's a Netbeans issue, not a actual issue. Just double click on your JFrame. Hold on. There we go. Expand it on out, or take it out to the size of 400 by 300, because that's what we have it set at. And then double click on your JPanel2, and it should design this container. There we go. Or you can right click on it and say design this container. But sometimes it does do that, unfortunately. You just kind of have to resize it a little bit. It's best to go ahead and design one panel as you go through it. Just to kind of keep that from happening. But if it does, just one thing I found is, now it's not working. Is you can just kind of select them like that. Just using the right click and hit design this container. Sometimes it works out a little better. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to add our text area and our back button. And I have noticed once you kind of get some once you kind of get some elements in there, it kind of works a little better. All right. One thing I will tell you, like I said, this is a Netbeans issue, not a issue with the actual panels themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go and pause this now. I'm going to rename all my buttons and fill out the labels and everything. Y'all don't need to watch me do this. And then whenever we come back, we'll be ready to do our code. All right. Now that I got everything named and I got all my variables named and changed over and everything like that, one of the things I want to show you real quick is a little bit of a problem and how we're going to address that. So whenever we run this, one of the things you'll notice is that as we kind of click around on here, both panels are kind of showing up at once. This is obviously not ideal. So we're going to address that real quick, and I'll show you how to address that in a second. So we're going to close this down, stop running that. And so now we're going to go from design, we're going to go over here to source. So one of the main reasons why it does that and it shows both panels like that is because by default, panel visibility is set to true. Whenever you put the individual components in each panel, because if you notice over here, I have components assigned to panels right there. One of the things it makes them both visible, but if you make one panel not visible by setting its value to false, then what ends up happening is it'll hide those components as well. So since obviously we don't want panel 2 to be seen right now, and we'll come down here and we'll look at all our variables at the moment, what we're going to do is we're just going to start off in the constructor, and we're going to say that panel 2, we're going to set its visibility to false. And now whenever we run this again, going back to the design, you notice that I can run my mouse over everywhere and the things don't pop up like they did before. This will just help us out, and it makes it to where only the components for panel 1 are visible whenever we first come in. All right, so now let's add some functionality to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do, then probably pause the video and then get it in there just so this way you don't have to sit and watch me type it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a private instance variable of an array list of my name class here. And then I'm going to add some functionality to this button, add name, to where every time I do that, it takes the name from this text field and it stores it into that array list. So we'll kind of look and see what that looks like. I'm going to pause it while I get that code in there. All right. I'll be back. Okay, so as you can see at the top of the class names here, I created a private instance variable called names, and then I initialized it in my constructor, as we know we're supposed to do. And then it doesn't really matter which order that you do these in. The only thing that really matters is that this init components has to be the first line in your constructor if you're going to have anything deal with components later on. So I would just make it the first line of your constructor because that's what activates all your components. Everything after it doesn't really matter because it's all going to be implemented and run prior to you doing anything with your frame anyways. And then down here, I created the action here performed for whenever the button's clicked. Remember, you can just double click on the button and it creates that method for you. And I created it to where it basically gets the name, the string from the input field, creates a new object of my name and adds it to the array list. And then it just resets the text. So now what we need to do is we need to create this finished button, and we need to make it to where what it does is it hides this frame and makes the other one visible. So I'm going to double click on it correctly, and then it'll create my action button for me. And so this is kind of a two-step process. So we need to hide one frame and make the other one visible. So what we're going to do is I'm going to look down here, and I don't think I changed them, which I should have, but I didn't. So it's just jpanel1, jpanel1 dot set visible, and make that false. And then we're going to make jpanel2 dot set visible and make that true. Now there's more that we have to do for this method. For right now, I just kind of want to show you that everything's working. So we're going to go and run this. We'll add a name in here. Add another name in there. So we're good, and we'll hit finished. And notice how it creates one panel to the next without hardly anything in there. So now we got to add the code in that actually populates the fields. Again, I have to create a loop for this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pause it. I'll put the code in, and then we'll come back. Okay, so now we have, so I added the loop in here. It'll go through, it just creates a string called name list. It adds all the names from the names array list, and then it basically it makes the output. Now, one of the nice things about this is this button right here is actually on the first panel, but you notice how we're accessing an object of the second panel because the output is my text area. So the one nice thing about having all of this in one frame is the fact that all of it is private instance variables of the same class. So therefore, the panel, its visibility, is merely just controlling what elements are visible, but not what elements exist. So there's no need to pass it back and forth. And so what we're going to do is we're going to come back to design here. We're going to go back to this thing, and I'm going to go ahead and set up this back button. Now this back button is pretty easy. Oops, that's not what I wanted it to do. Hold on, give me a second. There we go. So I created now my action for my back button, and all I'm going to simply do is I'm going to repeat these two steps for it, but I'm just going to change it from true to false. So in other words, it's now going to make jpanel1 visible and make jpanel2 invisible. So now this should actually keep our thread alive. And so one nice thing about this, again, is the fact that since this array list is a private instance variable, the whole entire class, all these panels have access to it, so you can just send the information, put the information where you want it based on whatever private instance variable you're doing, and not worry about passing it from one thing to the next. It all happens within the same one. So let's see that this performs the same way as the example that I showed you. So we're going to come in here and we're going to add some names. And we're going to click finished, and it comes in here and it prints up the names just fine. So now we're going to hit back. We're going to come back and we're going to print up add name. And so we added a name, and then when we finished, notice how it now creates the list with adding Steve in there. And so this is how you create multiple panels within the same frame, and how you can use that visibility to go from one thing to the next. Again, I would advise to minimize the number of panels within a frame, just because it makes it hard to manage all of that. But I would say probably maybe like 3 or 4 at most. 5 or 6 gets really difficult. So, but again, it's your project. You guys decide what to do. So hopefully this was helpful. If not, then hopefully all I did was waste your time. So anyways, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. That's it for now, though. I will be posting this code to the Canvas project, by the way. All right.